Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In the last lecture of function, we have discussed about the type of functions, how to pass parameter into the functions, and we have seen some built-in functions. In today's session, we are continue with function. I am discuss about scope of variable within the function, default value parameter for a function, variable length parameter list, and some other built-in functions. So let's discuss about scope of variable. Scope means the accessibility or visibility of a variable that you can use within the program. Scope of variable can be local, global, or you can say static. Static is also one type of scope we can consider. So when you define any function, then if you define variable within the function, so its scope is local. That means it is not accessible outside that function. If you define a variable outside of function, its scope is global, so that cannot use within this inside the function. To use that, you can use the statement global, which will be import the scope of global level variable to the local level. Let us understand by examples. So let me open my notepad file and I will start write coding for PHP. Let me start my web server as well. Right, so I have to start my web server from here. So web server is starting. I can check it from here and I will type coding in PHP. So I start with opening and closing tag of PHP and save this one as a file. Save as inside the folder of WAMP. I have created the folder name in EPG as a function2. And this is my first program, so I give one local.php because I had demonstration about local. So let me write one function local scope or local demo, and here I define $variable is assigned to 5, echo h1 the value of variable defined inside a function is $variable. Now outside of that function, let me write echo h1 and the same statement, the value of variable, but now I type outside of function, and save this one. Before that, let me call this function local demo. Save this one. To see the execution, open in our browser. So I will open EPG, in that function2 and local. So it say the value of variable defined inside a function is 5, but outside it will be say undefined variable. The reason is that the scope of this variable is within that local. You cannot access it outside of this function. So that's why it shows this error. Now let me give demonstration about global scope. So let me define here, or I can use the copy paste the same code here because it is very similar of that one. So I just copy and paste, and let me define one variable here, $global is assigned to, let's say value is 10. Now I write, now if I type here echo h1 the value of global variable defined outside function is $global, and here I again write for outside function the value of global variable is $global. Save this one as a file, save as second and global.php. So just look at here, first I define global variable, so its scope is global. Now inside that function, if I want to call this, it should display error. Then I use local demo, so it should display this value, and outside the function local will display error and this one will work. So to do not make much confused, let me delete this line and save this file. Let me execute this one, refresh the page, and so it will say the value of variable defined inside function is fine. The global variable defined outside is, after local is, okay, there is a spelling mistake, so I have to write global. So that means it is 10, but inside that local I cannot write that code. If I just put comment into this line, there will be no error. So in short, you can say, though you define any variable which is outside of function, so its scope is global. So global is not accessed inside that local scope. You can do that by using global keyword. So let me just to give idea, I just not make comment here and show you the result. Now to utilize the same thing, I can just make copy paste the same code, and let me just write here after that line global $global, or again to make more simplify that code, I can delete that two line as well and save this one. Global statement dot php. So I define global variable, but to use with inside the function I define global statement and then the variable name, and then we type this value. So let's see the result by execute that value. So there is a syntax error on line 5. At line 5 I haven't provided global $global. Okay, again spelling mistake, so it should be global. So now if we run that code, it will display the value of global variable outside is 10 and inside is also 10. You can check it inside function. Here I should write inside, so it make very clearly, logically clear. So inside function is 10 and outside is also 10. So this is about the scope of variable. The one scope remain is static. So when you use function and you use any variable, as the function is closed, all the values of variable is wipe out. So next time you call the function, it will be start from the fresh value. However, sometime you may require that the variable should retain the value. So at that time static is come into the picture. Let me give demonstration of that. So here I write one code. Let's say for example here I write function, let's say function name is hello, and I can define variable, let's say $count is assigned to 1. Then I can say echo h1 count is $count, and $count plus plus or $count is assigned to $count. Now you call that function. Let me save this one as a file, save as fourth one static demo dot PHP, or simply I write static. Save this one. Let me execute this one. So it's a count is 1. Let me call it again. This hello function I would like to call 5 times. So I save this one and execute this. So each time value of count is 1. Now what I want that each time I call, the value should be retained. So for that I just need to provide static keyword before the variable count. So now the variable count is static. So the value of this one is retained. So first time it should 1, next time it will be 1 plus 1 2, third time it will be 2 plus 1 3. We can check it by look at here, it is 1 2 3 4 5, and scope of static is also local. Here we define is inside function, but though the scope of static is also local. So this is the static variable. You can use this static keyword. So this is all about static. Next we come to new point is that default value for parameters. Sometimes it may require that you do not predefine how many parameters you are passing, or what is actually value of that parameter, not a number of parameters, but what is value of that parameter. So at that time you can pass default value for any parameter. So if the value is not passed, then the default value passed by you is considered. In case a user provide the value, then that will be override to the default value. To provide default value, when you define the function, just write parameter name is assigned to its default value. So default value of parameter can only be a scalar value or an array of scalar or null value. It cannot take expression, a function call, or an objects. Let's understand by one example. Let's say for example here I create one new function. Say function name, let me define function set gender, and here I write $gender is assigned to male, and then we define echo h1, the gender is $gender. Now you call this, let me first save this one. So color coding is very easy for me, so I write default parameter dot php. So now I call this function set gender without passing any parameter. So as I don't pass any argument here, it will be by default no, this will be gender. If I write echo h1 after calling with arguments, and I call set gender, and here I write female. So now this gender should be female. Save this one. Let me execute this. Refresh, run this one. So the gender is male, but the gender is female because you pass here as a female. If you don't pass, it will be take the by default value which is male we define here. The other benefit is that sometime you don't know what to pass, so you can use null value as a by default, and if not set, you can set some another value. Let you give example by understand by example. So define that again. Function set date $date is assigned to null. Now you can check that if not is set or empty $date, then you can define $date is, let's say, date function, and by default d, m and y format, and you can say echo h1 date is $date. I have to provide here a parenthesis opening and closing is set date and closing for this one. Save this one as a file, save as default null.php. So initially null, that means if not then you provide that, otherwise if you provide some date, that date will be printed. Just look at here first I call set date without any parameter. Now you can say echo h1 call the date with defined date as 25/6/2015. So you can call set date so just save this one. Let me check it by using browser. So it is this one by default date, and when you call with that it will set this value. So it is good idea that sometimes there are multiple parameters you pass. Date 1 is null, date 2 is null, and you can pass any one value, then second will become, or you can set that way also. So it is a handy option when you write coding for that one. Now there are built-in functions. So one such built-in function is function underscore num underscore argus, which is returns number of specified number of argument passed into the function. And then two more functions which will be considered function get argus and function get argus. So the second function get argus is written an array, and array has all the arguments which are passed to the function, and function get argus has a written argument that specify index, because you have to provide $arg as there. So let me take demonstration of function underscore num underscore argus, because you want to know that how many arguments are passed into it. So let me type start coding PHP file save as 7 function underscore num underscore for arguments argus dot php. So let me write function, let's say count argus, right? And here I can define variable $count is assigned to function underscore num underscore argus, and display echo h1 there are $count arguments passed. Now we can write that function. Let's say for example if I write count argus and 0, then again I call count argus for count arguments 1 and 2, count arguments not 1 2 any random value, let's say 10 14 23 56 72, or I can call any alphabet value like A G H and X. It can be double quote or single quotation. Save this one. Let us check this one, refresh and check function num arguments. So there are 0 arguments, then we pass 2 arguments 1 and 2, then we pass 5 arguments, then 4 arguments. So this function will be very handy to check how many arguments you are passing. This two I can take later on. Then built-in functions provided by PHP is include and require. There are one more variation of this function, include underscore ones and require underscore ones. So include function is include all the file or the file you include into it and run the script. So that will be very helpful when you want to move from one page to another page. The good example is that you create your PHP file, and to make formatting you create one HTML file. So each time you have to copy the code of HTML, you can include into it, and your loop will be the same. Not only HTML file, you can call PHP file as well also in case you require, because you have multiple files and then you require one file to another, you can use include statement. The difference is that if include function is fails, it display warning but continue the executions. The general syntax is include, and optional you can provide path. If you provide path, it must be written in the parenthesis. Same way you can write include once. And the similar way you can write require, but the difference is that in require, if function fails, it cause a fatal error and stop the script execution. So it is up to the user or as per your requirement which one you should use. Generally you should use either include one or require once. The reason is that that file include only once, otherwise you can include it multiple times. So it is up to when you develop a program, you have to make sure that which one you require. The same way you can use exit function. So exit function and optional you can provide status, so it will be exit the current PHP script. If it isn't specified, then this function display the status before the exit script. And same way exit you can write die function. Let me take demonstration of die as well. Say for example, let me create one file using die. So I save this file as a file, save as, type as a at die demo.php, and I create one function or anything. Let me say very simple thing. I just start a loop while $i is less than or equal to 10. You can print the value of I. $i is plus equal to 1 or $i plus plus if $i is equal to 7. You say die right, and your while loop is completed. So just save this file. Let me show demonstration of that one. So open into browser, run. So it will be 6. As it moved to the 7, it is exited. Same way you can write for exit also, either die or exit. This is not much difference between these two. Okay, I should write exit here, so you should be clear about it. So I just run this one. So this is exit. So these are the two functions that you can use it. So that's all about functions. So in this second lecture of function, I have considered that what are the scope of function. We consider local, global and static function. Then how to pass default parameter to a function, or if any null value is passed, then you can use isSet and provide some value to it. Then we consider that built-in function underscore num underscore arguments to determine how many argument you are passed in the function. And finally we consider this include and require function, which will be helpful to include any PHP HTML file, and as well as die and exit function to show some message before you exiting from the script.